Story 1. It depends. All restaurants have at least some form of dress code. Story 2. I appreciate it in a sense. It is a vibe. It makes for a fun topic of conversation when there is not one. I went to an upscale steakhouse. A couple across the room was in full strappy leather and studs. Story 3. If a place has a formal dress code, I likely can't afford it, so I simply don't go. Story 4. It is their right. If you do not want to follow the rules, simply eat elsewhere. Story 5. Absolutely necessary for high-end establishments. Restaurants sell ambience, not just food, and how other patrons dress is part of that. Story 6. I would rather not have the Chuck E. Cheese experience when I am not at one of their locations. Story 7. I want to know what the dress code actually is. Can I wear a jacket over a golf shirt and pants with comfortable sneakers? Is a tie required? Many places post a vague dress code like casual smart, which means nothing and can be used to discriminate. I would rather not wear a tie to dinner. I am generally only dining at a restaurant with a dress code when on vacation or for special occasions. If I had to fly there, it is a hassle to pack black tie clothes just to get good food. A jacket is fine. Story 8. I am going to play devil's advocate and say that there is a place for spaces that are intentionally formal. However, that formality is sometimes used to discriminate, and that is not acceptable. Story 9. I do not see a problem. It is their choice whether to set that or not. Story 10. It is not my thing. I want to wear what I feel comfortable in. Story 11. I am okay with no shorts, flip-flops, and so on at a fine dining establishment. Once they start demanding ties and jackets, I am out. Story 12. I do not really care, laughing out loud. Should I care? I would just go somewhere more relaxed if I did not want to dress up. There are plenty of such places, so it is not a big deal. Story 13. I think people are looking for an experience when they eat out, and those who go to a restaurant with a dress code want to dress up and treat themselves to a fancy meal. If you do not want to dress up, there are many other places that do not expect you to. Story 14. I appreciate a dress code that matches the restaurant's level. It is only as effective as the seriousness with which it is upheld. I took my wife to a high-end steakhouse in Niagara Falls with a business casual dress code. We dined among men wearing jeans and Michael Jordan jerseys. Story 15. If you are going to a nice place, put your big boy clothes on. It will not kill you. Story 16. They are fine as long as you know about them before going in. Fancy places deserve to be dressed up. If you are not up for it, do not go. I am definitely casual, but if we are going somewhere fancy, I will tuck my shirt in and wear matching socks for a couple of hours. Story 17. It is nice because I can easily mark those items off the list for consideration. Story 18. I think a dress code is a low bar to clear in order to patronize a private business. If you want to eat at a certain restaurant, putting on an outfit that complies with its rules should not be too much to ask. The food had better be excellent, though. Story 19. That's whack. I'm well off, and I still think I should be able to walk into a restaurant wearing a sweatshirt and be seated. Story 20. This is the same as websites that allow comments and include terms and conditions permitting a user to be banned. Story 21. If you want to eat a formal meal, expect to wear formal attire. Story 22. Like jacket and tie places? Forget them. They do not get my money. Besides, I could not afford to eat there anyway. Story 23. If I am out and do not meet a restaurant's dress code, I can almost guarantee I cannot afford the food. It makes my decision easier. Story 24. I love it. It tells me which places are too pretentious for my taste and will overcharge me for mediocre food. Story 25. Good. I like fancy places, and they would not feel like one if people could walk in wearing a tank top and flip-flops. I have to say that I have never paid attention to how other people are dressed, so I might not notice. Story 26. It's their establishment. I'm not about to try to impose on them. Story 27. I find them pretentious and not worth patronizing. The idea of putting on expensive garments only to risk spilling food on them is absurd. When I go somewhere to eat, as long as the person next to me is wearing something, whether it's clothes or a trash bag, I don't care. I'm there to eat because I'm hungry, Who cares what I have on? Story 28. What do you think about restaurants that have a dress code? Story 29. I am in Belize, and tourists are a big part of our business. We have only one rule regarding dress. No shirt, no entry. We do not care about footwear. We seldom have issues enforcing this. It is never locals who come in without a shirt. It is always tourists. Story 30. Take your hat off. They do not serve hot dogs here. They took the bleachers out last year. Story 31. It is nice to go somewhere and not be surrounded by scumbags. Story 32. I live in Los Angeles. It is nearly impossible to find any place open to the public with a formal dress code, and it has been that way since the 1970s. The only place I can think of is the Magic Castle. Dressing up is part of the experience, and you must know a member. A friend of mine did. Story 33. It is strange to be upset about this. It is their business. If you do not like it, leave. Story 34. I think private businesses should be free to make such rules. If you don't like them, don't go there. Story 35. If a business requires a dress code, it can set the standards it wants. If customers refuse those standards, the business will not remain in operation. Story 36. Who does not like fancy places? Some places want to attract a certain clientele. You cannot be mad about that. Story 37. Great. I would be pretty annoyed if I showed up to an expensive, upscale restaurant and the people around me looked disheveled. Story 38. They are likely to charge too much for mediocre food. Story 39. It seems pretty normal. Even going to the pub for a meal means you will have to follow a dress code after a certain time. Story 40. There is no problem with it. Most workplaces have dress codes. Schools do. The military has them. Sports teams set rules too, for example when players try to wear different socks. Dress codes are common in many settings. Story 41. This might be silly. You can always choose another restaurant. I love a place without baseball hats myself. While traveling, we have too often seen Americans spoil the occasional special dining experience with ball caps, shorts, tank tops, and flip-flops. Not all restaurants have to be casual, but many are. Story 42. At the country club, jeans are not allowed in some dining areas. Dress casually in others. Story 43. They are for women. I do not know a single man who likes to dress up. The occasion is irrelevant. Story 44. This is why I have never been to Commander's Palace in New Orleans, Louisiana. I am not dragging a sport coat into the humid city to eat your overpriced fish in one of the best food cities in the world. Sir, I will not. Story 45. It is fine. I have eaten at a few. A nice dress code usually means it is a date night location and the vibe matches that. I am in Detroit and we have several dress code restaurants. I have been to some that have dress codes and to others that do not. It is not hard to put on a sport coat and skip the jeans for an evening. Story 46. If I don't want to dress up, I don't go. The fanciest place I'll go is at most business casual. Even then I can get in wearing a pair of jeans and a polo shirt, which is my standard work attire. Story 47. Dress codes? I have been to James Beard and Michelin-rated restaurants. I really cannot recall ever seeing a dress code. I have noticed that I was underdressed at some places, but I could not care less. I know which fork and spoon to use. Forget the pretense. My money is the same color as everyone else's. Story 48. Sometimes it is nice to go to a place where you know everybody will be well-dressed and the decorum will be appropriate. Story 49. Boring. I would never attend unless the dress code was fun. For example, if everyone had to wear a cute onesie or animal ears. Story 50. I think it's obnoxious. Why should anyone really be worried about what anyone else is wearing? I mean, as long as you have clothes on, it shouldn't matter. If you want to get dressed up, go for it. I like wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. I'm not sure how that affects anyone. They're there to eat. I don't give a fuck what you have on. Story 51. I will not go to them. They can run their business however they want. Story 52. I just spent a week in Byron Bay, Australia. One of my favorite things was that no matter how fancy the restaurant, no one batted an eyelid when I walked in wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and jandals or flip-flops. Story 53. I like fine dining, though I cannot really afford it. One day I will. Many places allow relatively casual attire, so I will ignore those that stress dress codes. Story 54. I couldn't give two shits in this economy. If eating at home is faster and cheaper than McDonald's, I don't care about expensive places with formal dress codes. Story 55. Perfectly fine. It is a fancy restaurant. They can create rules. Story 56. It is their business. I do not care. If I have to attend, I will dress up. Story 57. I am fine with it as long as they advertise it and state so when you make a reservation. Story 58. In general, I hate the idea of a dress code, but for this it depends on what kind of place it is and how strongly it is enforced. For example, if you are serving $100 steaks, yes, you can judge my ability to pay for it by how I dress. But if it is a dive bar, there are no rules. I will come in for lunch in my work clothes today and wear a fancy dress to dinner tomorrow. Story 59. Dress codes are fine, but businesses should explicitly state if they have one. For clubs and bars, I appreciate when they use social media so I can see photos from past events to get a feel for the level of formality and appropriate attire. Story 60. I think if you work in a strip club, you should dress accordingly. If you don't like the dress code, don't work there. Story 61. Whatever floats people's boats. Not my style, as I only like real burger joints. Story 62. Any place fancy enough for a dress code is probably too fancy for me anyway. Story 63. You can dress however you want, as long as it does not interfere with me and my dinner. Story 64. If I cannot wear what I want, I do not care to go. Story 65. It depends on the dress code and on whom it is enforced. The no shoes, no shirt, no service policy is acceptable as long as the rules apply equally. So no topless servers. However, I loathe formal dress codes because they are so haughty toward women who do not wear dresses that cost as much as a month's rent or several months' rent, while men can easily wear a $50 tuxedo. If you do not want to conform to gender stereotypes, staff can be rude. I might have breasts, but I would rather wear a $50 tuxedo than an $8,000 glittery gown that itches and feels like it has been dusted with powder. Story 66. Often it is more about keeping the plebs out than actually enforcing anything. SK in Brisbane, Australia does it to keep beakies out, apparently. Story 67. I have honestly never heard of this until now, so I guess I do not think about it. Laughing out loud. Story 68. It is reasonable to expect a minimum standard of clothing, such as not showing up in underwear. As long as the rule is not discriminatory, for example banning an indigenous garment that would otherwise be appropriate, I do not have an issue. Story 69. I'm pretty sure every restaurant has a dress code, hence the no shoes, no shirt signs. Story 70. Does not make sense in those gimmick restaurants served in complete darkness. Alternatively, you might wish one of those nude restaurants had a dress code, but if you are a naturist who goes to nude attractions, you would be used to paunchy flab. Story 71. Good. It is a private establishment. Their business, their rules. Story 72. I think guidance is needed for some higher-end restaurants. Story 73. I was at a fancy place in Los Angeles with my cousins. There were about 8 of us. A suit jacket was required, which I did not have, but they had one for me to wear. No problem. Story 74. It is a marketing ploy. If they and their customers like it, they should be able to dine that way. It is no different from some other expensive restaurants. They just want a meal without flip-flops, bikini bottoms, and overalls. Story 75. It has never been a concern for me in the past 30 years. Story 76. I tend not to go there. Generally, if they have special dress codes, I cannot afford them anyway. Story 77. It's all about the atmosphere. If it is an upscale restaurant, you should wear appropriate clothing. I think it would be odd to go to Joe's Crab Shack in a 3-piece suit. Story 78. If we are talking about fancy ones, I think most people cannot afford them. Story 79. I get it, but I think it is done. I live in a trendy city with fancy restaurants, yet you will always see someone in flannel and cargo pants beside a couple dressed to the nines. It adds diversity and I like it. Story 80. Merciful, unique, fuel, groovy, waiting, swim safely, tease, historical pause. Story 81. It is their choice. No one is forced to eat there. The stricter the dress code, the higher the price. Story 82. Who cares if you do not like the rules? Go somewhere else. Story 83. If there is a vibe they want, they are free to create it. However, there should be an outline of what is required so there are no arbitrary ways of deciding who is in and who is out. Story 84. Nice places have dress codes, and one should always respect the code. Story 85. I think it is completely appropriate. For example, Mitchell's restaurants in Columbus are places you visit for anniversaries or similar occasions. So it is preferable that everyone wear attire that is not regular street clothes or casual wear. Even if you are not going out for a special occasion, if the meal will result in a bill of $300 or more, it is reasonable to expect you to dress with class. Story 86. As long as it is applied consistently and clearly outlined in a publicly available policy, I support it. The issue is that some restaurants will allow wealthy customers to wear anything but, when they encounter someone they do not want, they will find a minor reason to remove them. For example, there have been cases of black customers being asked to leave for wearing sneakers while many other diners wearing sneakers were not asked to leave. Story 87. I do not mind them. I will have teenagers in a year, and I would eat there with them. Dressing up with my wife makes for a fine evening with just adults. Story 88. I don't mind if a restaurant has a dress code. It's not my thing. I'll make an exception for really good restaurants, but I've done so only twice in my life. What I mind are restaurants that are kind of wishy-washy about it, or use terms that don't mean anything to describe their dress code. Our dress code is clean, city, festive, cocktail, chic, casual with flair. That's a joke, of course, but I've seen many restaurants where no one really knew what they meant. When it's not clear, peer pressure and awkward glances dictate the dress code. These days it seems like a majority of such restaurants do it this way. Just tell me exactly what the dress code is, and I'll choose whether I want to go. Don't make me ask people on Reddit to figure it out. Story 89. It depends on whether it is a nice uniform or something tacky and cliched. Story 90. For fancier restaurants, it is understandable that they would want people to dress in formal attire. If it is a fast food place, however, that is just stupid. Story 91. Some people have special occasions they want to celebrate and prefer a classy atmosphere. Restaurants have a right to choose their clientele, and I am all for it. Personally, I like to dress semi-formal or smart casual. If you do not want to dress up, there is always McDonald's. Story 92. I don't care for them, but I can understand someone getting excited about the prospect of going to an exclusive restaurant and dressing up for it. Story 93. As long as the dress code is equally enforced for everyone, I have no issues. Story 94. I have worn pajamas and a hoodie for a late evening run to a drive-through ice cream spot. But inside most places I wear nice jeans and a knitted cardigan for casual dining, and a dress with heels for fine or fusion dining. Story 95. It always seems like it is applied only to certain people. Otherwise, people like Bianca Sensori would starve. Story 96. I have never personally encountered one. If you want to do it, go ahead. The food and experience should be worth it, though. Story 97. Most places have a minimum dress code, which is reasonable. For high-priced restaurants, I can understand patrons wanting to maintain the aesthetic. If I am paying hundreds of dollars for a meal, I do not want to be seated next to someone wearing thongs and a singlet. At a family restaurant, I do not want someone wearing fishnet stockings and a profane slogan t-shirt. Story 98. If it is not a high-end white tablecloth establishment, the dress code is probably just a dog whistle intended to exclude black people. Story 99. They suck. I swear food just tastes better when you're barefoot and shirtless. It's a fact of life. Story 100. They run it. They set the rules apart from legal stuff, obviously. If I don't like it, I don't eat there. Problem solved. Story 101. It is pretentious, but I just do not go to those places. It usually means I am going to pay more for a mediocre meal that I am supposed to think is amazing because I can finish the food in 1 or 2 bites. I will take the local dive with the owner who grows his own tomatoes out back and wears the same paper hat he wore in the 1970s any day of the week. At least I know I will be full afterward. Story 102. It is really not hard to put on a button-down shirt when you go out to eat. I have never been turned away for wearing that with jeans. I guess I do not try to eat at black tie places. Is that what you mean, original poster? A restaurant that serves caviar or something more like fish sticks? Story 103. Sure. Whatever they want is their business. Too fancy for me, though. I'm out. Story 104. I do not bother. I order from Uber Eats and sit in my room like a gremlin. Story 105. I am not sure we have those in the casual Northwest, where affluent people often attend expensive restaurants and events dressed casually. Story 106. As long as it is not discriminatory, that is, no hijabs, no yarmulkes, no kufis and so on, it does not bother me. Story 107. I went to an expensive steakhouse with a dress code. The less affluent patrons follow it and wear their best. The wealthy ignore it and come as they are. Some break multiple rules. Everyone is served the same, and everyone pays hundreds of dollars for the same meal. Story 108. I'm fine with it as long as the dress code is consistently applied. Nothing is more annoying than making a reservation, being informed that the dress code is business casual with no hats, and then being seated 5 feet from a man in a t-shirt and a ball cap. Story 109. My issue is with establishments that do not enforce their own dress codes. If I am fine dining and dressed appropriately, I do not want to sit next to a man wearing a backward hat, no matter how wealthy he is. Story 110. If there is any sort of dress code, I cannot afford to eat there, and even if I could, I would probably prefer a pitcher of beer, a basket of wings, and some sort of contact or blood sport on the television. Story 111. I am fine with places having a standard of dress so long as it is not overtly racist. For example, nightclub rules often are. Story 112. I do not think about them. I am not their target market, and they are not my target restaurant. Story 113. It depends on whether the taste and quality of the food match the formality of the required dress code. You cannot serve poor food and expect me to dress up. Story 114. If it is an upscale place, I completely understand because those places are reserved for things like date nights, business deals, formal interviews, and so on. Bonus points if they do not allow children. Otherwise, just eat elsewhere. Why would I need a minimum dress code of business casual to eat meatballs anyway? Story 115. For the vast majority of dining, I am totally casual and prefer it. However, once in a while there is an astounding restaurant that begs to be dressed up for and enjoyed, and I will dress up and enjoy it. Story 116. Private business. If you want to eat there, follow the rules. Pretty simple. Story 117. They are generally too expensive and not worth it for me. Story 118. It is not the kind of restaurant I would visit. I prefer freeform clothing, but it is well within an establishment's right to require customers to follow a specific dress code. Story 119. If you choose to go to that restaurant, it is your problem. Story 120. If we are talking about fancy attire, as an autistic adult who chooses clothing based on sensory needs, I do not want to be at a restaurant that tells me what I can wear. Neurotypical people getting hung up on clothing seems nonsensical to me, to be honest. Story 121. I think it adds to the atmosphere the restaurant is trying to convey. Story 122. It depends on the dress code. Some places simply require people to be fully dressed, and that is fine. Other places have dress codes that make it obvious they are trying to keep certain types of people out. I avoid those places even if I am not the type they are excluding, because they almost always turn out to be full of insufferable people. Story 123. As long as the dress code is clearly communicated before arriving and reasonably enforced for all patrons, it is fine. Story 124. Sometimes I enjoy a dress code. It is nice to dress up and be around other people who are also dressed up. I think it is good to have different establishments with different expectations. Story 125. I find it interesting when people have a weird hill to die on. I went to a nice steakhouse for dinner as part of my bachelor party. We mostly wore suits to look nice. I wore a suit with a t-shirt and a baseball hat. When I entered, they told me hats were not allowed, which was no problem. But I noticed people there wearing sweatpants. I find it odd that they prohibit hats but allow anything else. Story 126. It's great, as some of you assholes are slobs and need to stay in your house. Story 127. I do not like dressing up in formal attire, so I avoid those places. Story 128. It depends on the dress code and its flexibility. I understand the reasoning behind dress codes and respect establishments' right to set rules. However, I dislike places with overly restrictive codes and no flexibility. I think it is better to have a broad code, such as smart casual, than to require or ban very specific items. Story 129. If you want to wear your jean shirt and a baseball cap, go to Chili's. Story 130. If you want to eat the food, dress the way they want. You can always order to go at most places, and if it is the kind of place where you cannot, it is usually worth wearing a nice shirt or a more formal dress than what you would wear to a club. Story 131. What do you all think about the original Poster's house having a dress code? Story 132. It is a private establishment. They can deny me entry, and I do not have to eat there. Story 133. The food had better be fucking amazing if they are going to have an intense dress code. I was refused seating for a reservation at a restaurant near me for wearing Birkenstocks with slacks and a collared shirt when the dress code stipulated closed-toe shoes. It was 118 degrees Fahrenheit that day. I drove 2 miles home and changed shoes because it was our anniversary and storming out was not an option. I was miffed and wanted to hate the place, but the food and service were incredible. Ultimately, it was worth it, though infuriating. Story 134. Tacky in general, but if I owned a restaurant, I would hold theme nights with a dress code, such as a pirate theme. Story 135. For reference, I am in Dallas-Fort Worth. Restaurants do not have a strict dress code. If you dine at a restaurant, it is assumed you can pay for the meal. It is also expected that you will not dress like a complete slob at finer restaurants. That said, it is not unusual to see someone in a suit at one table and someone else in shorts and sandals at the next. As long as you pay for the meal, no one cares. Story 136. Unless my wife really wants to go, I'm good. There are plenty of amazing places to eat. Story 137. The only place in public where it is acceptable to wear sweatpants is the gym. Story 138. As others have pointed out, it is about ambience and setting expectations. There are always exceptions, but yesterday I had breakfast at a Michelin 5-star restaurant in Miami while on a work trip. A 20% gratuity was already included, with tip expectations on top of that. It ended up costing me $76. For breakfast, the view of the ocean was fantastic, and the service was excellent. I did not hear a single conversation from other guests because people dining there kept their voices to a minimum. To top it off, the absolute fucking best hash browns I have ever tasted made it totally worth a breakfast that cost nearly $100. Story 139. If the restaurant expects patrons to provide the class, it does not have any. Story 140. I'm not even sure there are 2 places in my current city that require more than business casual dress. Should I be trying to impress the chef or the food? The person I came with knows what I look like. The chef is not even following any dress code himself. Just make some food in the back room and be quiet. It's fine if people want to dress up, but they should not be required to be fancy in 2024. I've been to a lot of fancy places back east, but not in Denver. I'm just a tired member of Generation X now and do not care about impressing people anymore by wasting money on suits. Story 141. If they want an air of sophistication or at least class, then it's whatever. The one I find funny is a sign I saw at a golf club that said shorts must be of Bermuda length, which is the most hoity-toity way to ask people not to wear booty shorts. Story 142. I think some minimum standard is fine, but some places are pretentious. I still remember when I was in my early 20s. I had saved up to go to a nice restaurant because I liked this woman. It was the dead of winter with about a foot of snow. We dressed in polos, khakis, and shoes that were neither dress shoes nor sneakers. When we stepped into the restaurant, the host said we were dressed inappropriately and pointed at our shoes. He would let the women in but not us. I remember being miserable as we wandered downtown in the cold trying to find a place. We ended up at an ice bar, which felt pointless in the middle of winter. We paid for the women's taxi and walked home about 3 miles in the snow because it was so late and the trams had stopped running. Story 143. I like formal places because I can wear my rarely worn formal dresses. It's a once or twice a year thing. Story 144. To counter what many people are saying, I do not like strict dress codes. I understand wanting a certain level of neatness, but prescribed items like specific shoes or shirts make me dislike them. I enjoy nice, high-end restaurants, but I prefer ones with a pleasant atmosphere rather than stuffy places trying too hard to be fancy. Any restaurant that enforces that sort of dress code is not somewhere I want to eat. Story 145. Many places have a dress code, but one so unobtrusive that regular restaurant visitors do not notice. I have no problem with it as long as any special dress code is communicated. Story 146. Decency is reasonable. One should be properly covered and not be obscene. Anything more than that I will not put up with. Story 147. I will not be eating there. I am an adult and can wear what I find most comfortable. I would not eat in those kinds of restaurants anyway, as I prefer full-size portions and value for money over one-quarter plate servings in pretentious places. Give me a greasy spoon cafe any day. Story 148. The last time I encountered a dress code, they picked on my brother for not wearing a tie. I was standing in blue jeans, so we went somewhere else. Story 149. Places that have a dress code, such as requiring a jacket or a collared shirt, do it for their guests. They are not assuming your income. They are recognizing that not everyone can visit regularly or without effort. People often go to a nice restaurant to celebrate something special or save up for the occasion. Imagine taking your spouse for an anniversary and spending a significant amount of money. Do you want to remember the night with the image of the people seated next to you wearing gym shorts and flip-flops? Or would it feel more special because everyone dressed up for the evening? It may not matter to everyone, and that is okay, but it could matter a great deal to someone attending that restaurant. Story 150. You'll make a lot more money working in one than in a restaurant without a dress code. Story 151. I do not understand why some restaurants have a dress code, like some cocktail bars. I understand they care about their image, but unless you arrive in a tank top and flip-flops, I cannot see why someone who just wants to try a certain kind of restaurant would be prevented from doing so. I just want to eat something specific, and they will not let me. It is different from a club. It is not about having fun. It is about the food. Story 152. I cannot think of any here that have an official dress code. Some low-class places have dress codes that are effectively racist, but the requirement to wear a suit seems to exist only in movies, as far as I have seen. Story 153. I don't attend high-end restaurants like that unless you're referring to cultural dress codes, which should be standard. Story 154. Absolute bullshit. You should be able to wear whatever you want in restaurants. Story 155. Depends on what it is. I dislike the fine dining mentality. Food should not be reserved for certain people. I definitely dislike people wearing hats while eating because many members of my family are in the military and that bothers me. Otherwise, why restrict your clientele unnecessarily? Story 156. If you do not like it, do not go. It is private property. Story 157. All I care about in a restaurant is whether the food is good. Whether the dress code is tuxedos or bathing suits, I don't give a shit. Story 158. Either a high-class place or a few people have ruined it for everyone. Now there is a dress code which isn't fully enforced. Story 159. I don't usually go to them, but I don't mind. It's fun to play dress up every once in a while. Story 160. I cannot imagine anyone having an issue with them. There are a million places to eat. If you do not like it, you can walk a block and find another restaurant. Story 161. The only time I have encountered one, even tangentially, was when I looked up the nearest Michelin star restaurant out of curiosity. Story 162. A 3 Michelin star restaurant should commit to the bit and see how funky you can get people to dress just to eat at an exceedingly fancy place. Story 163. I think they are a great thing. They attract pretentious people and keep them away from places I am more likely to go. Story 164. As long as it applies to everybody and is not designed to discriminate against any social group, it is fine. They should have the food to back it up, though. Story 165. It depends on the atmosphere and why the rule is in place. If it is in a beach town and they do not want to deal with swimsuits and sand, that is understandable. If I need to wear a jacket for historical reasons, that is fine. Going out should be enjoyable. If I am not wearing the right jacket, or if I look nice and you are rude about it, that is disappointing. Story 166. It is less likely I will have to deal with someone screaming babies. Story 167. It is their business. They can and should run it how they want. They will suffer or succeed based on their decisions. If too many people do not like it, they will not go and the business will fail. If enough people do like it, the business will succeed. If you want to go but do not want to abide by their standards or do not agree with them, that is too bad for you. Story 168. I was walking around the local mall one summer, and we decided to have lunch at Dave & Buster's. I was wearing a sleeveless t-shirt because it was hot. As we walked through the front door, the doorman stopped me and said I could not enter without a full t-shirt, so I left and never returned. That was probably 20 years ago, and I would guess they no longer have that restriction. I had been there a few times before, and each time the food was mediocre at best and the experience was not much better, so it was no great loss. It seemed like a silly dress code for a place that is essentially a Chuck E. Cheese for adults. Story 169. I think it's pretty nice, actually. Some restaurants are casual places where families bring their children, construction workers pick up lunch in uniform, and people decide, in the moment, to eat there. These restaurants primarily sell the food itself. Other places sell an experience. They are more formal, suited for anniversaries, birthdays, and special occasions. Someone might pay a little extra to go someplace nice, get dressed up, and feel special. When everyone dresses nicely, it helps set the tone. Story 170. I have never been to a restaurant with a formal dress code, and I have no interest. Very expensive restaurants with Michelin stars hold no appeal for me. Story 171. I have not encountered one yet. Stereotypically, if a restaurant has a dress code, it is probably not a place where I would enjoy dining. Story 172. I'm fine with it, especially if the restaurant is upscale. The last thing I want is to sit at a table next to someone wearing a sleeveless undershirt and a baseball cap worn backwards. Story 173. Mostly they apply only to men. Women can wear the skimpiest, shortest dress with barely their shoes, a flap of rubber with string straps. For men it is a different story. Sorry sir, shorts are not allowed and you cannot wear sneakers. Story 174. Sometimes it's nice to have a reason to make yourself dress up a bit more than usual. Story 175. I do not go to them. I would rather be comfortable when eating my meals. Story 176. Unless it's basically, don't be naked, or an incredibly posh and fancy restaurant. What the fuck? Story 177. I honestly think it is kind of dumb. I am not one to dress to impress, but I do not cheap out on anything, dine and dash, complain about the price of the meal, or make a mess of the bathrooms. These are the reasons most restaurants have a dress code, because they assume anyone not dressed to the nines is going to be trouble. If a restaurant turns me away for being casually dressed, they have just lost my business. Story 178. I do not mind it, honestly. I usually wear a hoodie, but if I go somewhere with a dress code, I will follow suit. I will live, and so will those who are against it. Take a chill pill. Perhaps you will actually look good in a jacket. Story 179. I think it is good. I do not want chest hairs in my omelet. Story 180. I am a member of the Magic Castle in Hollywood. Part of the appeal is its formal dress code. It is one of the most exclusive clubs in the world, and the dress code helps enforce decorum in how people behave and carry themselves. Story 181. Just like business casual, there should be appropriate attire for restaurants. Levels of dress for sit-down restaurants are a good idea and should return. Story 182. It's a shame that some folk just don't get what's appropriate. Story 183. I do not mind it. It creates a nice ambience and a classier atmosphere than places where people wear baseball caps, tank tops, sports jerseys, or dresses with their buttocks exposed. Story 184. I'm fine with that. When I want to dress up for a special night, I choose an upscale restaurant. For a casual meal, I go to a casual place. It's nice to have the choice. Story 185. It is stupid and illogical. I will not go to any place that forces me to wear a hangman's noose. I loathe ties, and if I had access to the infinity gauntlet, I would snap 100% of ties out of existence. Story 186. I love it because I don't want to see people wearing an old shirt, sweatpants, and Crocs while I'm eating, especially if I'm spending over $100 for my meal. Take that mess to Chili's or Applebee's. Story 187. They have the right to set a dress code. You don't have to go if you disagree. Easy peasy. Story 188. I think it is up to them to decide the clientele they wish to serve. I am not opposed to the decision of any business owner about dress code. Story 189. I don't know if you mean written rules or a general unwritten rule to dress well, but many restaurants seek you based on how you are dressed. Near windows and facing the exterior if you are well dressed in a more formal, elegant style, and in the back if you are not. Can seem mean and discriminatory, but how a restaurant's customers look influences whether potential customers will come and their perception of the establishment's quality. You cannot attract wealthy customers if those already in the restaurant look poor. They will not think your offerings are of good quality. Story 190. Every restaurant has a dress code unless it is a nude bar. Private businesses have the right to decide who may enter. Do not complain or beg for acceptance. Go somewhere else or open a competing business and choose not to have a dress code. Story 191. A real dress code, like jacket required or collared shirt required for gentlemen at a fancy place, is fine, no problem. A bogus one, like no baggy jeans or rules designed to allow door staff to be racist at a trendy spot, is not cool. Story 192. Don't like a restaurant's dress code? Don't eat there. It's literally that easy. Story 193. I think it is a great idea. I do not go to those places, but having standards is fine for a business. Story 194. Coming from someone who used to work in fine dining, I appreciate a dress code at a nice restaurant. If everyone else is wearing black tie or cocktail attire and you show up in sweats knowing there is a dress code and are denied service, that is on you. Story 195. If they tell you that a dress code is required to dine there, that is their rule. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.